Garsfontein's been a massive power in the Titans region this year. Um, it comes as no surprise, actually, because they do have three Centurions in their first side already. So I think playing 100 schoolboy matches at that level is something amazing, and it's something that doesn't happen very often. So it's Ruben van Zyl. He's actually scored three centuries already this year, or in the Titans League. They've only played 4 games. He scored 300s. And then you've got Zander Venter, their fearless captain. He's a bowling all rounder, as I see him. Actually, he's turned into a full blown all rounder. He scored 92 not out the previous weekend against Menlo Park. So yeah, and then you've got Eckhart Struwig, the unsung hero, who's been there. It's turned into somewhat of a golden arm. Uh, when needed, he takes the ball and takes a wicket, or when you need him to bat, he bats. He's a very, I want to say, a very Dane Villas type batsman as well. So um, very talented, very talented. He's got a good eye as well. So
Hello and welcome to another episode of Stumped with me, as always, CS Chiwanza. And joining me today is cricket writer, analyst, weekend warrior, and my colleague, Franco Obersa. Franco, welcome.
CS, thanks for having me. It's always, as always, lovely to chat some cricket with you. So I'm excited for this episode.
Brilliant. Franco and I are in the trenches of school cricket. We are basically watching all that boring cricket that no one wants to watch. And we are keeping track of all the stars that you guys want to talk about, but don't really know much about. And so today, as we are just going to look at not the under 19 side because everybody knows about that. We want to peel back the layers and look at who's coming after those guys. You know, the up and coming youngsters with immense potential. We don't know where they'll end up, but right now they look like the next best thing on the scene. Franco, who'd you have from the Titan side?
CS, I've actually got a long list, like I said before. At the Titans, there's heaps of talent. It's so scary just to think at the Titans alone, you can think of about 20, 25 names off the top of your head, following them every week. So I'm just going to start with the top of my list. Obviously, Garsfontein's been a massive power in the Titans region this year. Um, it comes as no surprise, actually, because they do have three Centurions in their first side already.
Mm.
So I think playing 100 schoolboy matches at that level is something amazing, and it's something that doesn't happen very often. So it's Ruben van Zyl. He's actually scored three centuries already this year, or in the Titans League. They've only played 4 games. He scored 300s. And then you've got Zander Venter, their fearless captain. He's a bowling all rounder, as I see him. Actually, he's turned into a full blown all rounder. He scored 92 not out the previous weekend against Menlo Park. So yeah, and then you've got Eckhart Struwig, the unsung hero, who's been there. It's turned into somewhat of a golden arm. Uh, when needed, he takes the ball and takes a wicket, or when you need him to bat, he bats. He's a very, I want to say, a very Dane Villas type batsman as well. So very talented, very talented. He's got a good eye as well. So those are the three main guys from Garsfontein. And then you got Timothy Gordon, who's actually scored 150 this past weekend. A massive score for him, a massive score for Pretoria Boys High, as it actually got them back into the so-called Big Four, if you want to call it that, at the Titans League. That's now Affies, Waterkloof, Garsfontein, and now Pretoria Boys High.
Mhm.
And yeah, going on from that, we're going over to Waterkloof. As everybody knows, Waterkloof, the cricketing fabric of Pretoria or Titans cricket. They've produced Jordan Herman, Ruben Herman over the last couple of years, who's made their mark at the SA20. At the moment, you've got Rico van der Walt there. You've got their captain, Riley Miller, who smashes the leather off the ball. For a schoolboy cricketer, that is something you don't see very often. There's a lot of nudging going on nowadays, but you've got some kids who actually smash the leather off the ball, and Riley Miller is one of them. Rico van der Walt is another talented keeper batsman. He's also a very good gloveman, still in grade 11. And then we've got Johan Futh and Franco Schmidt as well at the top of the order. It does seem like we're getting a lot of batsmen through nowadays, where in the past it looked like more bowlers. Looking at Tristan Lees the last couple of years, Kwena Mapaka coming through. Okay, Luandre is a batter. Steve Stork was a batter. So it's nice to see the batting side also coming through, because I personally do feel that's what we need going forward. We need guys that can bat and just bat. We don't need another Oak who says, okay, I'll bat and bowl. And he doesn't really have a place in the side or the senior sides going forward. So I do think it's a great thing that we have a lot of batters coming through. And then obviously I told you about the boy at Easton's, Christian Duplessis, the fast bowler. And when I say fast bowler, it's genuinely fast. It's about 135, 140 going on there. Currently, he's struggling with a toe injury, so he's not quite up there. But he has been clogged at those speeds before, and if you watch him live, it is seriously quick. It's very nice to watch.
Last year at the North South, I think this year it's called the Vida Clava. I watched Vihan Pretorius and I pegged him as probably more talented. I know it's crazy, but I pegged him as more talented than his brother, Luandre, because how can anyone be more talented than Luandre? Luandre is doing things that no other 19-year-old is doing. But when I looked at Vihan, I thought, Skid is very, very, very good. What do you think of him, and who else is coming through from Afis?
I actually rate him at the same level, CS. I think we spoke about this before. Hannes and I, our boss, Hannes Ninaber, we have quite a saying that the younger brother is always the better one. So it's just a little bit of an inside joke. But I do rate Vian very highly. And I think everybody's seen him as a batter. He's a left-handed batter like his brother. Not quite as destructive yet, but he's a very good stroke maker. And it's nice to watch him when he gets going. But I think this year with the ball, he's been amazing. He's snapped up over 12 wickets already in the league. He's a very clever bowler. Speaking to Piet Cronje, his coach and director of cricket at Afis, he's actually one of those guys who can pitch up and decide, coach, I'm bowling off spin today. And he'll take wickets bowling that as well. But alongside him at Afis, we actually have Christian Linde, who's grade 9, batting at 3 for the first team. So that on its own is something amazing. And then looking at him the past weekend against Waterkloof, scoring a 79, a match-winning 79, was unbelievable to see a grade 9 boy scoring 79 against one of the top cricket schools in South Africa. And then we've got Daniel Murray. He's also a keeper. He's a keeper batsman. Very nuggety little player in the middle. He doesn't really give anything away. The thing I like about him is that you need to get him out. He's not going to go out. So it's the same with Christian Linde. That the other thing with Linde is if anything wide or loose, he's going to throw hands. So that's what you want to see, especially at schoolboy level up in the north with the batting friendly conditions. No fear is what is always said, and seems like a 15-year-old boy is showing everyone the way of how to play with no fear.
What you're saying reminds me of currently one of my favorite schoolboy cricketers from the Eastern Province, Corbin Tibri. He
Mm,
burst onto the scene as a 15-year-old, and he played a good hand in the previous edition of the school's SA20. And you just watch him, and it's hard to believe that he's only 15. I mean, the kid can play. And he's not just going, for the big shot or whatever. He's actually playing cricket. He rotates strike when the situation demands it, and he will jump on anything loose.
mm. No, that's awesome to see as well. Like I
And
said, a 15-year-old boy showing you the way of how to play with no fear is what you want to see. That's I think that's what defined Vian Pretorius as well when he burst onto the scene as a 16-year-old playing first team for Affies. It was also with no fear. It does seem like he's reined it in a little bit with the bat, but now that no fear is coming out with the ball, and I mean, if you look at him bowling, it feels like he thinks he's gonna do no wrong. Which I like. I like that attitude from a bowler, especially. You need that. So yeah, no, it's awesome to see these youngsters coming through.
mm, and okay, before we go on to Limpopo, there are quite a few good ones, aren't there?
Mm. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
we've got a few hidden gems up here in the north. Eh?
Yeah, before we go on to that part, let's just get Gauteng out of the way. Let me just get these
Yeah.
ones out of sight, and then we get
Please
into
don't start with Jason Rowles.
no man, look,
Everybody knows Jason by now.
I I also love him. How can I not start with Jason when I love him so much? I think outside
Absolutely.
of his
No, I agree with
family,
you.
I'm probably his biggest fan outside of his family, man. So, but
No, I think he's got a
but yeah,
few fans. Eh? If you bet like that, you've probably got a few fans.
no, I won't mention Jason. I won't mention Arman Manak, who's also a very
Yeah.
good one for me, or JJ Basson. No, I'm not
Yeah.
mentioning those. Um, I will start with the one we discussed last week, Ombesa Macha. Very, very
Oh,
talented
yes.
youngster.
Mm.
Um, only in grade 10, started playing first team cricket for St. Stithians in grade 9. And when I spoke with
Jeepers.
Wim Janssen, he says it's not often that we get a grade 9 student to open the batting for St.
Mm.
Stithians, but Mbesa just came through and they decided to back him. And I think that's one of their things that they back their youngsters. Look at Luandre when he was there. And
Mm.
you look at Rickleton when he was there. They put faith in these youngsters. And Mbesa, he dominated at the under 17 camp, which was very good to see.
Mm.
And he also went on an exchange program between St. Stithians and Scarborough. And in the UK, he smashed an exceptional century in a league match, actually, not for the school, and raised his side's title hopes. He was creaming adults, which is also very good to see. And I feel that this is the time for me to mention the St. Stithians exchange program because I've had a couple of people
Mm.
come to me, especially after Tom Rue last year when he was smashing everyone, and people were
Mm.
complaining that
Yeah.
Rue is an English youngster. But they have this great program. It takes a lot of work, according to Janssen, because you have to organize visas, accommodation, all the clearances, all the red
Mm.
tape they have to jump over. So it's not just as if they are bringing in kids from the UK. They have a good relationship with Leinster in Ireland, but they also send kids there. KG Rabada went, Rickleton went,
Mm,
and this year Marcha went. They've been doing it for
mm.
12 years, and it upskills youngsters, which is brilliant. And after Marcha, there's a kid called Thomas Collins also at St. Stephen's, very very good. He's only 15, and he's another one to watch out for, very good batter.
Oh, mm.
And then St. John's, one of my favorites, they have Nkosana Sibiya, another good one.
Oh,
He's just
yes.
suffered an injury this year, and he hasn't
Yeah.
played much. He's supposed to be their captain, but you know how it is when you're injured and you're out,
Mm.
then you're not playing.
Yeah.
A wild card for most people is Bafana Mtunzi from Queens. I was speaking to one of the
Oh,
CSA
yes.
scouts,
Mm,
and he says, when you have a youngster at Queens where the facilities are not that great and they don't get a lot of exposure,
mm,
you see him doing as well as he does. He was recently at the St. John's Harare Rams T20. He didn't shoot out the light, but he showed his potential,
mm.
which was very good for the
Yes. Mm,
invitational side from Jeppy, Kaz, St. John's, and then he was the only one from Queens. He showed that he has the potential to do good
mm,
things with a bat. It's just that sometimes with players of color, sometimes they are rushed. I feel that he needs that time to grow
mm.
so that he can deliver. Same thing with Mbesa.
Mm.
It's a player of color, but
Yes.
sometimes it just feels like the system is like, you know what,
Mm,
he's good, so let's push him along. No, no, just let him
mm,
develop. He's very good. He has potential. Just don't
mm,
rush him. If he's good enough, he's old enough. But sometimes we need to rein in that excitement
mm.
to just push kids forward.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think just letting kids be kids for a little while longer is an important part of growing as a sportsman as well. I think at the end of the day, we need to realize we're still working with 18, 19-year-old kids. And the science says a male's frontal lobe is only fully developed at 25. So um, we need to give these guys a little more time to find themselves. I mean, look at Quena Mapaka. He's burst onto the Protea scene, but he's struggling a little bit. He's been
Mhm.
expensive and he's not quite found his feet yet. But that's because he hasn't played a lot of franchise cricket. I'm not saying he's not good enough to play for the Proteas. I do think he's going to be the next KG Rabada, and I think he's absolutely got the works to become one of South Africa's best. But we just need to give him a little more time to find his feet. Look at Devil Brevis coming in after they gave him some time, and I know the public was all over the place. Please pick Devil Brevis. He's the next best thing. He's
Mhm.
baby AB. Um, and then they picked him in a T20 match, and he didn't quite feature. And now he's come back and he's scored 100 and a 50 in Australia. He's been picked up for 16.5 million at the SA20 auction, which is unbelievable money. But just because he had some time to grow and to grow into who he really is as a player. So I do agree with you that some players, I'm not saying even you've got players of color, you've got the white players, you've got all the players that are talented that are being rushed a bit too early because they're doing really well at the level where they are. Um, we do need to realize that there is a bit of a gap between school cricket and then franchise cricket. We don't have a strong club setup. I think only the Western Cape and Gauteng have strong club setups. Further, we don't really we have club leagues, but it's not at the level that they should be. So there is a bit of a gap for those boys jumping from school cricket, doing well, taking fivers every weekend, scoring 50, scoring hundreds, to starting even playing Division Two, which is
Mhm.
seen as the lesser division. And I've seen guys at Division Two, seriously talented guys. I mean, Stefan Tate ran around at Division Two, Keith Dudge and those oaks. Um, so I think we need to, like you said, give the kids a chance to settle down who they are. And then to add on to that, I think we need to make a plan to get the club level where it should be, because it isn't currently. So um, that's leaving a massive gap, and we're losing a lot of talent because of that.
Yeah, I mean, look at uh, one part that really gets me going about club cricket is I look at a youngster like Mo Bobulia from the Northwest.
Hmm.
He was unable to develop fully in the Northwest. All his
Hmm.
cricket before the parents realized that what they were doing was wrong, because no parent will intentionally break the rules. But
Hmm.
for a long time, Mo Bobulia played club cricket in Joburg because there's no competition in the Northwest.
Hmm.
He his development would have been stunted if he had not if his parents were not willing to
Hmm.
drive up and down from Northwest to Joburg to get him some game time.
Hmm.
And so that's not
Absolutely.
what any player should have to go through. And now he's with the Tuskers. I hope he does well, but then also you want him
Hmm.
to just sort of develop in the high performance section, because regardless of his talent, yes, some kids
Hmm.
are brilliant like that. At 19, like Luandre, at
Hmm.
19, they'll be smashing seasoned professionals, but you just want someone to have at least one season in the high performance space, upskilling and
Hmm.
get. It's also not just the skills, but the mindset, just getting their mental space just in the right position.
Hmm. Definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. I do agree with
And
that as well. Like I said, there's that gap between the school level and going on to professional cricket, even varsity cricket. There's a difference between school cricket and varsity level, because let's say 90% of the guys playing at varsity is good enough to play in Division Two, if they pick up a contract to go and play there. But they've had the time to settle down. So as soon as they get into the structures of CSA, they sort it. Where a younger guy, like you said, Bulbulia, had to drive from Northwest to Joburg to go and play club cricket. At the moment, it's the same. It's the same in Limpopo. It's the same in Mpumalanga. I must say, coming from Limpopo and still playing Premier Club cricket, yeah, it has picked up. The Limpopo Impala players are forced to play club cricket, not just for their own game time, but to make the club set up stronger. So you've got young boys like um, we're moving to Limpopo now with the names. You've got a Rivoningo Chalke, who comes from Palaborva, the hub actually. He's been picked up by Ben Foster now, and he's playing at Ben Foster. Uh, he's been invited to the under 17 tap camp as well, and he's played for the CSA Hub Invitational 11 over the last 2 years, and he's actually made a name for himself from Limpopo. But that guy gets the opportunity to play with senior Limpopo Impala players, and they can give over their experiences to a guy like that. We've got Timothy Baker. He plays with me at Hornbills. He's currently the leading wicket taker in Limpopo, left arm off spinner. Um, our club captain is Aldred Hawken. I mean, Aldred Hawken is one of the better known names in franchise cricket circles around South Africa. I think he had a 15-year or a 12-year career going on
Mhm.
at the franchise level. So you've got those guys who you can sit with afterwards, have a cool drink with them, and just chat about cricket and life in professional cricket. And I think that is a valuable asset to have. And I think that is why club cricket in Pretoria and Johannesburg and down in the Western Cape is such a massive asset for the guys playing there. Um, it's it's experience you gain that no one can take away from you. So you might walk into a change room as a 19-year-old, but you've just had a couple of beers with Jock Rudolph. a
Mhm.
week ago and you had a 2 hour chat with him. Now you walk in like you the most experienced guy ever, and you start scoring runs and you're doing well, and everybody wants to know your secret. Actually, back at the ranch, it's just you playing club cricket from 17, 18 years old and mixing with these guys who's played for the Proteas wherever before.
Mhm. Yeah, I look at one of my favorite clubs is Mark Parks, and I think the Monarchs are doing a great job there. Hussein,
Mm,
he he fills his side predominantly with youngsters because he wants them to get that experience at club level. The Arman Monarchs, the Morteza Monarchs, they all come through
mm,
that. They play a lot of club from around 14, so they get to hone their skills, their craft, their batsmanship. And you watch
mm,
them play at school or under 19 level, and they just look a class above. And it's all testament to
mm.
the club scene.
Definitely, definitely. You
And
can't take away, like I said, you can't take away that experience.
mm, I have a couple of more names from the Gauteng area, um, from Joburg actually. Lincoln Kasai. I love this kid.
Mm,
I've been trying to tell everyone I come across that Jeppy has this kid, Kasai. It's very good.
mm.
He's I he's 15.
Yeah.
He was he was also part of the invitational side that went to Zimbabwe, and I think he has two half centuries in that tournament. And in the final, he bowled them to victory. I I had no idea he could bowl, but he bamboozled the the Clifton guys. Like, wow, I had no idea. I love Kasai. It helps that Casey Arnold, his coach at Jeppy, rates him as highly, and I think he
Mm,
might be someone to watch out for in the future. And then there's this kid called Joshua Hall. He is one of a dying breed. With that, I mean, these days, anyone with good hands is given the gloves. No disrespect
mm.
to Stubbs, but he keeps at international level. I mean,
Yeah,
he's not a proper
yeah.
wicket keeper. He is
Yeah,
able, he has the
he's not a
ability.
recognized keeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
But Joshua Hall is a proper glove man. He is very good with the gloves.
mm,
It's a craft that he's good at. And I hope that, because one of my things is fielding, I believe that if you field well, you will win games. And it starts with a keeper. If you have a proper
mm,
keeper, you set the standard. And Hall is one of those kids. He sets the standard with the gloves. I really love them. And then St. David's, not Rose, not Manak, but Butler, another 15-year-old, very good. Is is one to watch out for. I think he's just one of those because at the moment they have this amazing side that's dominated by guys like Jason and Arman, but
mm,
Butler is just there and thereabouts. And if we go to Kez, I think you might have heard of one or two of these ones. Their captain, Wade McQueen. I love him. He's a proper all rounder, very, very good
mm,
with both bat and ball, and good head on his shoulders too. He captained the the side from Joburg to the Zim thing where they won the title. He was very good with his decision making. And then also there's Trey Gordon, number three batter, very destructive. He he will pounce on
mm. He's
excuse me.
very destructive.
He will he will pounce on anything loose. You With him, it's always a game of
Mm,
inches. You miss your line by an inch, he's going to motor you. And then he's also good with strike
definitely.
rotation and stuff like that. So I
Mm,
like the look of Trey Gordon. I
mm.
I think
I
Thiago
love to watch him
Diaz,
when he gets going. Eh? Yo,
yeah, I think Thiago Diaz, also from Cares, might be someone to watch out for. Yeah, opening batters have it hard.
mm,
So he
yeah,
does his job well. And I think there might be something in
yeah,
there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
But so far, that's my list. I'm sorry it's full of batters,
The
but
thing I saw from Diaz is mm,
mhm,
the thing I saw from Diaz is he's a very fighting batter. He doesn't give up easily. So, like you said, opening batters don't have it easy, especially up in Joburg. You've got,
mhm,
let's say you play a Noordheuvel up in Joburg, and you've got JJ Basson running in, bowling 140, and he's a left arm bowler, swinging it both ways at 140 clicks, and he's a
mhm,
tall
mm,
boy. Now you've got you'll see him keep fighting. If he plays and misses, he'll walk away and he'll gather himself and he'll go again. And that's what I like about him. I think that is the thing that sets him apart and quite possibly makes him someone for the future. Um,
mm.
is that fighting ability? I mean, look at Dean Elgar. Dean Elgar was the same.
Yes.
Graham Smith came out to bat with a broken hand against Australia as an opening batter. Um, so South Africa is very well known for their fighting opening batters, and I think Diaz falls into that category, and that's why we might like the look of him. I certainly like the look of him. I've seen him play. He's very talented as well. Um, if he and Gordon gets together in the middle, the running between the wickets is something to behold. I mean, I think I watched one game of Cares last year, and those two batted together, and it was actually just scary seeing these schoolboys run between the wickets like that. I was tired sitting on the side. Now I'm not I'm not fit anymore. I'm overweight. I'm actually just playing club cricket for the fines afterwards, which is very fun. But it's lovely to see schoolboys just owning that part of the game as well. So I do agree 100% that there's something from Diaz that we can look forward to.
Mm. And who else from Limpopo? I'm sure it's not just one or two that you mentioned.
No, definitely not. We've got Yepia Botha. He's at Marensky. He's still in grade 11. So he's a SA's tennis player as well. He plays exceptional hockey, which might take you back to someone else who's called Mr. 360, who also enjoyed both those sports. Yepia was also an exceptional rugby player when he was still playing rugby. Little nuggety scrum off. He's currently a wicket keeper as well. But
Mhm,
just his hand-eye coordination, I think it comes through the hockey and the tennis. Um, he's able to hit the ball in three places, but it just works for him. It, it's actually nice to watch him when he gets going because it's proper cricket shots. It might not look like that if you don't know the game as well as we do, but
mhm.
if you know the game and you know the angles, you'll understand. Jeepers, that was a good cricket shot. Um, from Ben Foster, we've got, like I said, Reveningo Chalke is now there. We've got their captain, Jabulo Maseku. He's an all-rounder. I rate him as an all-rounder. At the start, he was just a batsman bowling a bit of off-spin, but in recent years past, he's turned into actually one of their strike bowlers as an off-spinner. And in Limpopo, you do need a very good turner. I think that is why Timothy Baker from Morensky is also rated so highly. So Njabulo is great with the bat, but he's at the moment he's better with the ball. Um, at Piet Potgieter, who's actually the front runner this year in the league, uh, surprisingly to all the people in Limpopo, because Piet Potgieter hasn't always been the the strongest, to say it in a nice way. In the past, Piet Pot was normally the team you can score your points against and you can make up points. Excuse me, but not this year. This year they are extremely well rounded. They've got a very balanced side. Um, they've got a boy named Rayan Malji. He's also played provincial cricket before. He's also playing Premier Club cricket here in Limpopo. So he's got that experience, and you can see it. You've got their captain. I think he's their captain. I'm not sure. Muaz Mohammed, who's been scoring runs left, right, and centre. Uh, Unbelievable batsman. He's just so well rounded. Like you said, with Gordon, the same. Anything loose, you get punished. Any good ball, you get taken for a single, and you turn around and you're frustrated afterwards. Um, so those are the names I can currently think of very quickly. I've not written all of them down, but there is definitely a better side going to the Kamayola Week this year for Limpopo because you've got PHS as well, the defending champions, Hoërskool Pietersburg, Stefan Swanepoel, uh, all rounder. He's also a spin bowler and he's a left-handed batter. So I think overall this year there's a lot more individual talent across Limpopo, and I don't think a lot of people know this, but to organize a provincial practice or a provincial camp in Limpopo takes quite a bit of admin because
Mhm.
all the towns are so far apart. I mean, if you got a boy from Tabazimbi and you've got a boy from Zanin, you have to meet in the middle, which is Mokopane. that's that's still 250, 260 k's from where you live, so it's far. It's a day's travel to get wherever you want to go. So that's why it's so difficult. I think it's the same thing in Mpumalanga. If you got someone from Piet Retief traveling to Middelburg, and it's not easy because it's quite a distance instead of just traveling 20 minutes in traffic from Garsfontein to Affies. Um, on the highway, and then you're there. So, um, but coming back to the point of we've got hidden gems in the rural provinces like Limpopo and Mpumalanga, even Easterns, which isn't really a rural site, but they're a smaller union. Uh, Northwest has picked up significantly. Not saying they were bad in the past, but there's definitely a move in the right direction. And I think at the end of the day, we've done now with the COVID babies. The the COVID thing is out of everybody's system. Finally, with the rugby as well this year, we saw a significant lift in abilities and stuff like that. So it does feel the same with the cricket this year. There's more freedom. There's more cricket on the go as well. As you know, we never stop working. So we've got all the cricket going on again, and we've got all these guys honing in their skills and abilities, even in the smaller unions.
I'm just sad that I do not have my hand on the pulse in KZN because one of my favorite stories over the past year was from KZN, Rose Kutsia. I love that kid. Um, he's
Mm,
out of the crew that we're discussing because he played Kayamajola as a senior. He then
mm,
spent time with the Gary Kirsten Academy, and he's currently in the Dolphin system, just bubbling under. And I think he's very
mm,
talented. So when you have that kind of player, you feel there has to be more. And yes, there's more, but it's just that
mm,
I didn't do my research properly, so I don't have players from there. Same thing with my province. I know it's
mm,
my province, but as in I cover it a lot, but they haven't started playing yet. So it's difficult to
mm,
gauge beyond the Cobbin Tidbury's and the
mm.
Lupelum Dieshas. It's hard to
Yeah.
say who's beneath
Mm,
the current cohort of under 19s.
Yeah.
I think Gray High might have a few. This might be something we could look at after the Vada Clava. Speaking of which, what do you think is going to happen this year? Last year, Yorick led Afis to victory. What do you think is going to happen this year?
I think this year we're in for a rocking 4 days of cricket. I can't wait. I'm schoolboy excited. I can't wait for it. I know we've got the Michaelmas and the Cape Schools Festival preceding the the Wilde Klawer, but I can't wait for the Wilde Klawer T20 because I've actually went to check yesterday. 13 of the 16 teams going to be in action there is under the top 20 in South Africa. So you've got best of the best facing each other. I mean, Rondebosch is currently number one, according to the unofficial rankings. Rondebosch is number one, and they're playing Waterkloof on the first day, somewhere on the first morning. And I can't wait for that. It's a clash of the titans there. And then Afis obviously being the team that they are this year and the defending champs. You've still got Ruben Groenewald in there. He also played a very, very big part or big role in their victory last year alongside Jorich and Divan. So, yeah, I think furthermore, Grey High, obviously, last year on the last day, chasing down, I think it was 228 in the 18th over to win the game, which is unbelievable. It's just the batting friendly conditions make it so exciting. Like I said, and it gives guys from down from the coast the opportunity to bat on something that is very close to being a net practice because the pitches are rolled so hard and it's so flat. It does give your spinners an opportunity to get into the game as well. You saw last year the seamers. It wasn't a great week for the seamers, but it was not a bad week for the spinners. But yeah, very excited for the Wilde Klawer T20. Like I said, we're in for a rocking 4 days of cricket.
We should have had Malo here because last year,
yeah, definitely.
Last year I was slagging off Grey College, the other Grey, but they had an outstanding spinner. I think his name is Daniel Hatton. I loved his leggings. He was very good. He did very, very nice things with the ball.
It's grade 11 this year, yeah.
Yeah, and look at him, grade 11 this year. So last year he was in grade 10, and I don't think many people are talking about him, but he's one of those, that we could be looking at and saying, you know what, this kid is talented. And if I'm not mistaken, he batted 6'7", which is very handy too, especially when you're at a school like Grey College.
Yeah, he's a stroke maker, so that's his job. Actually, is to come in a bit later and do the job of a finisher. He's a bit more aggressive. He's got the shots to frustrate you when you can't get the big scores or the big shots in. The little reverse paddles and reverse scoops and paddles and sweeps and all those things. So being a very good spinner, I think he's also a very good player of spin. And that's why he bats so low, especially in T20s. But I do agree with you. Last year, his performance against Waterkloof to get them to the final was something to remember. I don't think people remember that, but I think that was probably the best spin bowling exhibition I've seen since I've started working for SuperSport Schools 3 years ago. And I think if the pitch is very much the same this year at Camp Discovery, which is a bit slower and lower and turn friendly, I think he might play another big role. They've got a 3-prompt spin attack. They've got a very good spin bowling coach in Vian at Grey College. So he works long hours with them, and yeah, I just think you can't write off Grey. They are the runners up from last year, and they've got they nearly beat Paul Risterson in a 2 game. It was just unfortunate with the weather. And I think another great addition is Paul Roos, obviously, with Dion Botha coming back up to the north, being Affi's previous director of cricket. He's got some serious talent down there that he's bringing with. So that's going to be another exciting addition. I think the other exciting addition I'm looking forward to seeing is the CSA Hub Invitational 11. I think I spoke to you last year about it when they went unbeaten at the Oppenheimer week, and that is 100% what you want to see. I mean, these boys come from basically nothing, and some of them bowl in normal running shoes or tackies, and they're still able to go unbeaten at a week like the Oppenheimer Michaelmas week. And I can't remember who they beat on the last day. I think it was Affies or I think it was Affies. I'm not sure. But when I saw that on the last day, I said, okay, these boys are here to play, and they've made a massive statement. And I think they're going to do the same this year at the Filtered Lover T20.
I like that the CSA Hub invitational side is attending all these tournaments. I saw them at the Fusket, and they did play well. I think that was the first time I took notice of Bafana Mtunzi, and I was like, okay, this is very interesting. I think he scored a huge 172 in a hopeless contest. You know, the invitational side was done. No one was batting well, and he just stood tall and scored this massive, massive century that just secured a draw for them. And you know, as you say, you know, they keep playing these tournaments. They keep getting better, and they can also help the next lot of players that come through that pipeline.
Definitely. Like I said, these boys come from basically nothing, and I've seen it growing up as well. It's great seeing them getting the opportunity to play where they are. It's like it makes a massive statement if you do something like that, scoring a 172. It immediately puts you on the radar of everybody watching, not just CSA. It puts you on the radar of the franchise coaches, seeing you at under 16, under 17 already. And I like the fact that they give the younger boys from the hub opportunities to play, because if you go and look at the ages, it's normally going to be under 16s, under 17s. There's rarely an under 18 boy playing there. And I think it's a good initiative from CSA and all these guys organizing the week to get these guys in, to get them the exposure they need. Because if you then see them at the Kai Mayola week a bit later in the year, they look a cut above the rest. They run with the big dogs just because of the experience they get from playing against these great sides. I mean, I think Waterkloof has played 33 50 over games this year, which is amazing. And now you get the opportunity to bowl at someone who's batted in 33 50 over matches, and you get to hone in your skills as a bowler, and you've got guys around you who can give the necessary, let's say, way to go forward. This is what you do in this situation. Whereas if they didn't get this opportunity, they would have just played in the league and the schools as a 20 and gone through the paces and get lost before the provincial weeks, and then all of a sudden at the provincial week they take a 5 or score a 50 or 100, and now everybody's up in arms. Where has this boy been? But they haven't gotten the opportunities to play at the level where everybody watches. I mean, even I'm sometimes guilty of, this is a bit of a dead rubber. This is not a big enough game for me to watch. And then as soon as you make that decision, there's always something that happens. Someone takes a 6 wicket haul or scores a 150 that surprises you. And that's the beauty of schoolboys sports and schoolboys cricket, is anything can happen on any given day.
Unfortunately, with all that good stuff coming from schoolboy cricket, there is still one area that I feel needs a lot of attention. I mean, I had two scorecards of a St. John's versus Queen's match. The one scorecard
I'm
did
sort
not
of
have
getting a
names.
headache already.
The one scorecard did not have names. So I would have to divine, use my sorcery or fortune telling methods to work out who was betting where, who's this, who's that. The other scorecards had wrong information. They gave a half century to someone who did not even score half century. I don't think they scored 20 runs. The one scorecard had a landslide, one scorecard had the right score, but it was nameless. So, that is one of the things I really struggle with schoolboy cricket. It's
It's
the
seriously
poor
frustrating.
scorecards. It doesn't matter who's scoring. It's so difficult to wrap your head around that. We have these talented youngsters. You have this app that's supposed to help you communicate with the rest of the world what's happening, and no one is doing right by them.
I wish that I can get the coaches. Sorry, say again, yes?
No, go ahead.
I wish that we can get all the coaches, the school coaches, into one hall or wherever, and just explain to them the importance of a scorecard. What importance it has for us as journalists to get the boy's name out there. I mean, we're not doing this for our own. We're not doing this to become famous sports journalists. I'm doing this to give a boy a chance to be seen where he wouldn't normally have been seen. And if you, as a coach or a scorer, are not actually pointing fingers to anyone, because it is a bit of a, excuse my language, a bit of a shit show currently, especially in the schools SA20, which is the new branded biggest tournament at schoolboy level. Everybody's excited about it, but we can't write about it because we don't get scorecards, firstly. And secondly, if you get a scorecard, it is shockingly put together. Like you said, you don't have names. You've got a P1, you've got a P2, you've got a P3. And unfortunately, I don't know who P1 and P2 and P3 is. I know that's the batting order. Luckily, I know that's the batting order. But I don't have a name to say. I don't have a name to give through to say, listen, this is the guy who's been scoring heaps of runs in the schools SA20. Same what happened to you yesterday with the St. John's scorecard. You don't have the names. I mean, they played Queen's high school. And it does feel like if the bigger schools play the lesser schools, there's the effort that goes into scoring goes out the window a bit. There's no effort to go and get the boys' names, which I think is unfair. Firstly, it's a slap in the face for your opposition because you can't do it properly. And then, obviously, if your own scorer can do it properly, it will be a massive plus. But like I said, coming back to the point is, if we don't have names to write about, we can't write. We can't tell the people, okay, this is the next best thing. There might be boys' names that we missed in this discussion now because of scorecards that's not been done right. And that is, for me, a very sad thing currently. And it's a frustrating thing, like you said. That's why I said I already have a headache. Probably got to take 2 grams after this, just talking about scorecards. But yeah, I think people need to know about this because it's important. People need to know that we need names to write, and if we don't have names, we can't write. And if we don't have names, we can't tell you who's the up and coming stars. We can only tell you what the other media tells you, and then it's going to become boring.
There's one question that I've always wanted to ask. I kept thinking, whom do I go to? And there you are, Wombats. What's in the water there? Because there is a certain
At the moment,
AB. There
at
was
the
a certain
moment, I think
AB.
it's not. It's not something in the water. Yeah,
Mm,
and then a certain Jerry van Schalkwyk coming
mhm.
through. I don't think it's necessarily something in the water. I think it's all the stuff. It's the lucky stakes you get there at Wilbur spot still as you turn off the highway. Um, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that question actually. It might be the stakes or it might be the Cook sisters at the pot still, which is also lovely. I think that's why I look like I look. It's because of the Cook sisters at that pot still. But yeah, it's unbelievable to see talent like that coming from small towns, and I sort of get
Mm.
excited talking about it. It's it's, I joked about it the other day, and I said, "Listen, we must probably ask Linda from office if he doesn't come from Wombos, just to make sure that we don't have a third one coming from Wombos." And it's unbelievable. So yeah, I don't necessarily know how to answer that question, but I don't think Jerry van Schalk was the last one we saw from Boss coming through. There's definitely another one coming. Just wait.
No, great, man. And I want to put you on the spot here because I think after the SA20, schools SA20, Vada Clava is the next biggest thing. The schools SA20 is IPL, Vada Clava is SA20.
Mm,
That's just how I look at things.
mm.
Who's your top three at this year's Vada Clava?
Yo, that's a very difficult question. You've really put me on the spot now. Um, Thinking quickly, I think Affis will make it through again. Definitely. They've got a very well balanced side. Like I said, you've still got Ruben Groenewald there. You've got Van Pretorius. Um, those two alone can win you a match when needed. I think Rondebosch will be a massive power again. They do seem to fade away a little bit, and I think Jaco Zeeman will be mad at me when I say this, but I do think they fade a little bit away, struggling to the conditions, especially their bowlers, and it makes sense because the Cape schools coming here they actually need to change their whole approach to bowling up here, because down in the Western Cape it's slow. You've got the ball moving around a little bit off the deck. You've got Oaks who swing the ball. Um, Up here, because of the batting friendly conditions, the ball doesn't move as much from the pitch. It does move, but the bounce is so consistent you can actually just head through the line. So um, if they can adapt to that, they will definitely be one of the top three sides. And then, the team number three is a difficult one. Obviously, you've got Waterkloof, who's won it the most in previous years. They became the first side to win it twice in a row as well. They've also got, they've got Riley Muller, exceptional T20 batter. Like I said, Rico van der Walt as well, exceptional T20 batter. You've got Paul Roos, who's a very good side. You've got Durban High School, which we actually haven't talked about yet. But the Horseflies have had an amazing year of T20 cricket, winning the Clifton T20 and then going on to win the Eastern Night League as well, which is something
Mhm.
that doesn't happen very often because of the very competitive nature which is engaged in currently between the schools. So you've got Waterkloof, you've got Durban High School, you've got Paul Roos, you've got Grey College, you've got Grey Hive, you've got St Andrews or St Andrews School from Bloem, which is the schools SA20 champions for the Free State, and they were a serious competitor throughout the competition. So it's very difficult to call a third team in there. but I do
Hey,
think
you didn't
Affish might
mention
be the
St.
favourites
David's.
because of being defending champs, and with St.
You didn't
David's as
mention St.
well. I
David's.
mean, like I said, 13 of the 16 sides there are under the top 20, and I think 4 or 5 of them are under the top 10. So you seriously put me on the spot there to call or just call 3 teams. And I do think anything can happen. We both cricket journalists. We've seen T20 matches swung the other way because of the shorter format and the underdogs winning because of the shorter format. I personally believe the shorter the format, the bigger the chances is that anyone can win it. Um, so that's what makes the Wilde Klaver as exciting as it is as well. Anyone can win it. Any team can beat the other on a given day. I mean, King Edward or Kez is also there again this year, which is another side who can pull something out of the fire. You've got JPI School. So yeah, it's very, very difficult to call who will win it. I just think because Afis is defending champions, I think Afis might be the team to go all the way, not necessarily win it, but go all the way to the playoff rounds.
Brilliant. Franco, thank you very much for spending some time with me doing this. I know you would rather be doing other things, probably writing, probably having a braai, or probably preparing for a club cricket match. But it's been fun.
It's been really fun to see us. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoys the nonsense I talk, because I do talk a lot of nonsense, but appreciate your time, CS, and it's as always a pleasure talking to you.